Hi, everyone. Welcome back to HR Unplugged. I am super excited today to be joined by Erica Walton. Erica, you'll certainly learn more about her as we talk, but has basically recently joined the HR team after a long career in operations here at Maximus. And so she's going on almost 2 years in HR, has had time to explore and learn the world around her. And so talk to me, Erica, about that transition. How's it going? What have been the biggest surprises for you? And, what are some of the key takeaways you have so far?
So it's been a really great transition. I did have a bit of imposter syndrome when I first joined HR, having spent the first part of my career in operations. You think, oh my gosh, I'm working with all of these really skilled HR professionals. How am I going to possibly, stand with them and work with them? But one of the great things about Maximus is that as you grow skills and develop skills, you can transition from one area of the company to the other. So that's probably the biggest takeaway, is how easy it was to transition my operations skills to HR.
Fake it till you make it.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's been a great transition. The other big resource is really seeing how HR and the business, when we work together, how great we can impact that employee experience, and how it's necessary to have those synergies to have a really positive employee experience.
Great. So let's talk for a second. When you came into HR, you picked up the HR Service Center right away. We call it the HRSC. And then shortly after that, you've picked up MALT, the Maximus Accommodations and Leaves teams. These are probably two of the heavier operational departments that we have in HR. How's that going? How are you finding that your prior skill set is helping? How are you working through those?
So it's definitely been a challenge. I think one of the great things about Maximus is everything we do is with such a high level of quality. And so figuring out that balance between quality and ensuring our processes are repeatable and we're delivering the same experience for each employee as they come through the HRSC and MALT. So we've been spending a lot of time on standardizing, figuring out how we can make the employee experience better. And that's been really exciting to bring that side of my operations experience to HR.
Were you surprised that HR actually ran operations like that?
I was. In my head before I joined HR, I thought HR and operations have nothing to do with each other, but you quickly learn that there are a lot of commonalities. And I'm used to our clients being, our state clients that we work with, and being able to pivot and understand that the clients I serve today are our employees. And that's been a really exciting pivot, and looking at how we really focus on those moments that matter, and we meet the employee where they are, because often we're talking to an employee when they're at a point of unknowns or frustrations, or they're scared. They may have been experiencing a health crisis, and now they're coming to the team that I lead to provide them support. And I think that's so important, that we're providing them with a high level of support so that they feel comfortable going out on their leave, and then they can feel confident coming back to work and transitioning back to their day-to-day job.
And were you surprised at all? When I think about the challenge in HR around operationalizing things, it's that every employee's experience is so different, right? That employment journey is different for everyone. And I watch our employees, and I think the more we treat them all the same, the less satisfied they are. Truly engaged employees feel like it's really a customized experience. And so how do you streamline an operation, and run it operationally efficient when you have sort of that counter force working against you?
Yeah, I look at it in a couple of ways. One is making sure that the noise, if there are really basic questions that we can just put out on a website, those things that we can encourage employees to look at, maybe to get that baseline before they pick up the phone and call us. And then we have to take the time to listen to their experience and ensure that we are giving them that service that they need to make sure that they feel like their case is being resolved. But it's really looking at what are the things that can be streamlined, and what are the things that need that personal care.
Gotcha. That's great. So, one of the things that you and I have talked about many times is sort of career ladders at Maximus. And I think a lot of people think of career ladders as only being progressive, I can only go this way. But you can take a lateral move. In fact, some people, you can take a demotion to move sideways in an organization to try and learn something new. You sort of took a risk on that. But, when you think about it, at Maximus, how do you see people navigating the career ladder, and how do you see them kind of making the decisions as to how to do it?
Yeah. I share this story. When I first joined Maximus over 16 years ago, I was all about what is that next rung on the career ladder? And I couldn't see beyond going, taking the next rung. And what I've learned is that when you move to the left or to the right, you pick up a lot of skills and you get to broaden your skill set. And I think that we as leaders have to continue to teach people that you can go side to side versus looking at what is the next step up and down. So it's showing people how their skills can apply in other areas of the business, showing how you can take that risk on learning new skills, and maybe you end up not liking the skills that you gain, but you had that experience, and then you can move on to your next opportunity.
Well, it's funny to me too, because when you move into management, you oftentimes end up picking up adjacent roles or adjacent skills or capabilities that you never in your life are like, oh, I wanted to be that when I grew up. Early in my career, I remember I picked up a graphics department. I picked up internal communications and graphics at Corning Incorporated, and I thought, how did this happen? Internal comms and graphics, and it's funny because it's led to a career where I've co-managed comms and HR, even here at Maximus, but I never grew up thinking this was my path. And so how do you, when you think about it, you didn't grow up thinking HR is my path. You didn't move into the role you're in today thinking, you know what, you came and it was just HRSC. Yeah. Then it was malt. And now it's what can you do for employee relations and tier 1 HR support? And you're sort of picking up all of these adjacencies that you don't count on in your career ladder.
So when I started my career, my dad was in HR his entire career, and I was saying I will never be in HR. Categorically, I will never be in HR. I'm very much process analytical. I couldn't possibly be in HR. But like you said, I've been surprised at. I like to see how the pieces fit together. So while I might be process and analytical as a base, seeing how all the other adjacencies fit together and really impact that employee experience. I think since as we're a services company primarily, and seeing how our employees need to be supported, and from everything from, if there's an employee relations issue to just getting them some basic information to complete their day-to-day job, being able to see how all those pieces fit together, it's really been eye-opening and exciting to work through.
That's great. It's funny how we're shaped by our parents that way. My dad is the world's biggest micromanager, so to this day, I resist any form of micromanagement. Luckily, I have not bridged that gap and gone to the dark side.
We appreciate that. Yeah.
That's right. So talk to me a little bit about org change management. That's one of the functions you also inherited here. Is there one approach? What's the slant that you apply when you're thinking through change management? Because really, everything we do in HR has a change management element to it. It's everything touches every employee in a different way. And so how do you think about it? How do you work through it, and how do you manage it?
Yeah. First and foremost, I approach change management with empathy and really looking at everyone experiences change differently. And so looking at changes that way really helps set the groundwork when we're evaluating a change. The other thing that we do is really look at each of the stakeholders and what their experience is and what their experience is today versus how it will be tomorrow, and understanding that we may grasp the change really quickly because we're in it on a day-to-day basis. Everyone else will need time to process that and experience it. The other really important component is making sure that they're set up for success when they do experience the change. Many things in HR, you don't interact with it until you need it. So we may roll out a change today, but I may not interact with the change for another 6 months because that's when the policy impacts me. So again, meeting that employee where they are and putting those supports out there for their managers to have those conversations with them, and for the employee to process that change at that time as well.
I think that's great because I think you're right. A lot of times you'll implement a change, and if you're a manager who manages part of our high volume operations, you might interact with a change all day, every day. But then you might be a manager who has a team of 3 with little turnover, lots of stability, and you might not need to know how a process change happens, and but once a year. And so I think it's important that you meet people where they're at. And speaking of managers, one of the concepts that I think we see evolving more and more is to rely more heavily on managers to really not only be the first line of defense, but really help us manage employee issues. We are finding companies are empowering managers to do more and to manage more. And so, and it can range everything from career development to problem solving. Are you seeing this at Maximus? Are you, seeing challenges or complexities that arise with the approach? And, what should we be doing to be thinking about it or planning for maybe more self-service in the future?
Yeah, so I think this is one of the more exciting changes that we're experiencing here at Maximus. There is a trend across the board to empower and provide that authority to our people managers, to allow them to be that immediate leader, so we don't have to go through 4 levels to have a conversation with an employee. And that's a pivot from where we have been, making it easier for those people managers. Some of the challenges there twofold. One, on the manager side, making sure we're giving them the training when they need it. One of the things that you find is that when you become a people manager, it's not like you have the ability to take, here's a 6-week course on how to be a people manager. You are
that'd be nice. We'd like that, though.
Yeah. You're really thrown into it day one, and your people are selected to be people managers because you have a certain skill set and the ability to grow, and we really rely on that. So making sure that we are providing our people managers with trainings that they can take as they get into their roles. From the employee side, on this change, we really have to retrain employees to start to use those self-service tools. And that's probably the biggest challenge, because we don't want our employees to feel like we are pushing them off or we aren't providing them those experiences, but teaching them to say, go use these self-service tools for the things that aren't high value add, the things that are quick answers that you can go onto My Maximus and find, and then really save those conversations for your manager to have really meaty, meaningful conversations about your career or challenges that you're having, so that you can have problem-solving conversations with your manager. And as a manager, I find those conversations so rewarding and engaging, and being able to have those conversations versus more of the administrative conversations that you could say, you need to go back and check on My Maximus. And I think that's really important, to make sure that we're taking the time to teach people where to look for information, rather than just saying, I'm not answering that for you. Go find it somewhere else. Show them where it is a couple of times, and then they'll pick up on that.
Bring the horse to the water.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's great. It's so funny, because I think you're highlighting a very important issue, which is the importance of the manager. There's more and more research coming out on the importance of the manager. I'm personally inclined to name 2025 the year of the manager. I think it's an investment we're going to have to make, and we're going to have to really invest in that talent in a way that I don't think companies have historically done. And so I look forward to that. I think we've run shy of time, but I really appreciate you spending time with us today, Erica, and giving us your insights.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Michelle. It's been a great conversation today.
Thanks.